Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Near Memo with me, flying solo today, Greg Sterling, and I'm here with Purna Virji, a longtime friend, and she is currently the principal consultant for Content Solutions. Is that correct?
Content Solutions at LinkedIn, that's right.
Okay, at LinkedIn, yes. I was going to say strategy, but solutions at LinkedIn. And she's written an excellent book called High Impact Content Marketing, which we're going to be talking about today. But we'll be talking about the larger set of issues around content creation, content distribution, and AI's impact on the future of content strategy and marketing. And there's a ton of stuff for us to talk about. It was an excellent book. I will put a link to the Amazon page where you can order it. And also there's a 20% discount code if you order directly from the publisher. All of that will be on the page where we host the podcast. So Purna, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm really excited about this conversation. And we've got a lot to get through in a short amount of time. But for people who don't know you, I mean, you're a fixture on the conference circuit, and you were with Microsoft Advertising. Of course, LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft for a long time, and we're at search conferences and have done a lot of speaking. But many people who are listening may not know who you are. So just a short bit of background or information or context for them.
Sure, sounds great. Well, firstly, Greg, thanks for having me back, and thank you for being interviewed and being quoted in my book. The reason the book's better is because you're in it. So thank you, Greg.
I'm on one page. I'm on one page, page 170, I think, or 71 or something. But go ahead.
Your actual
yes.
Quote there, but your wisdom is infused
throughout the book.
Greg. Yes, throughout.
Okay.
So we've had many wonderful conversations over the years, and you make this whole industry better. So I was a former journalist, then reformed into PR, realized that's not for me, fell into digital advertising, and then the rest is history. So started SEO, paid search, was at startup side, agency side, was at Microsoft Advertising for a long time. And then just 3 years ago, moved over to LinkedIn, staying in the Microsoft family. And the common thread through everything has been this love for content. So whether I was a journalist or whether I was in-house or SEO, PPC, straight up content marketing, social media, content is the connective tissue through everything.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of different roles with different perspectives on content creation and execution, distribution. So how did this book come about? Why were you interested in writing this book? I mean, beyond the content being a theme throughout your career, what specifically attracted you to writing a difficult, challenging book like this?
Well, firstly, I had always at some point in my mind, I'm like, how cool would it be to get to write a book? Reading, you see so many different authors and meet them, and it's like, how cool. But I was just sitting there minding my own business one day when I got this email that changed my life. It was this gentleman called Steven from Kogan Page, and he said, hey, I've seen you speak over the past few years, and would you be interested in writing a book about content marketing aimed at practitioners? I'd also just finished reading Shonda Rhimes, I think the book where she's like the year of saying yes to everything. I was like, oh, if it terrifies me and excites me, then it should be a yes and not a no. And I thought the timing was right. We were right at the cusp of things changing, creator economy coming in from the previous attention economy. There was so much movement, and I had gotten so many questions from marketers all over the world about what do we do? What should we do? And it's very common questions. And hence I'm like, I must write this book because you don't say no to an offer like this. And if I can help people, I really want to.
Well, I thought that the book was really excellent, and it's surprising in its breadth. As I said to you before we started, in my mind, this is not just a book about content, which is a very broad topic, but it's a book about marketing in general. It's a book about customer experience on some level, and it even goes into company culture to some degree. You touch on some of these things. So it's really pretty expansive. why did you take that sort of broad, if you agree with that characterization, why did you take that really broad approach to content marketing?
So I do agree with that approach, and I'm glad that you picked that up. I think this really comes down to two reasons. Like one, I am what I have learned from TikTok that can be described as a multi-passionate person, and so I'm very interested in different things. I love learning things all the time, and so in my career, I've gotten to work in so many different disciplines and with different teams. So I've worked with product, I've worked with product marketing, I've worked with learning and development and instructional design, and I've worked with PPC or small businesses to the largest global enterprises. And you pick up these threads, and I'll notice connective tissues. I'm like, oh, product marketing actually does this thing really, really well. That if we could borrow that in content marketing, wouldn't we be better? And so I find these different connected dots or things that can be better. And then the other thing was having my first almost decade working in startups essentially, and scale ups and smaller, 100, 200 people companies. You had to wear many hats by default. You had to stick your fingers in multiple different areas. And so for me, it's just a very natural place to go where I'm like, oh, we have to talk like this. We have to do like this. So try to connect these different dots to bring a wider perspective so it's more holistic, so that people will ultimately get not just the why, the what, or just a different, unique way about thinking of it. So it's not the what are the best hooks that you can write to attract people, right? People tend to have these very narrow focuses. And I think if we broaden it, we'll all get better.
Well, that's what I might have expected in going into this. Not from you, but from a book like this, you would expect a very kind of purely tactical, listicle focused book, and this was almost. I mean, there was a lot of that. There's a ton of very pragmatic advice for marketers in the book, but it also has a kind of a philosophical viewpoint on content creation. So, who if you see me glancing over to the side, I'm looking at all my questions. I've got my trusty list of questions here that I wrote down as I was reading it. Who is this book for? Who should be reading this book?
It is ideally for somebody in the weeds or somebody who's starting, but it can apply to many more people. So originally, my remit that I got from my publisher was like, write this for the practitioner audience, like your marketing managers, social media managers, people who are there. But I wanted to add in a little bit more context if they ever wanted to say boss, stakeholder, like quickly skim this. So if you're a business owner, if you're newer to marketing, or even if you've been there for, 10, 15 years, like what are the aha moments that you can learn? So it is a bit broader, isn't it? What I say, like define the demographic. But if
Well, I
you're a
think I
marketer or no, go ahead.
no. I mean, I was going to say that while content marketers would get a lot of value out of this book, and certainly they should read it. If even if you're a very experienced content marketer, there's a lot in here that sort of expands your perspective, refreshes your memory about certain kinds of things. But this is also a good book for people who are not content marketers to read, I think, for CMOs to read, and for others who are in different parts of the organization, they might get a great deal out of it. Salespeople and others. So I think it's a very valuable book that has a lot of wisdom in it beyond sort of, the very, very narrowly focused tactical stuff, which is also in there as well. So before we sort of go on and start to get into some of the practical advice and perspective in the book, I want to understand what you mean by content. So everybody sort of has an intuitive understanding of a content, but if you think about it, that sort of dissolves into something larger. Like you use examples from popular culture, you talk about email, you talk about advertising, you talk about very discrete types of content. But how, I mean, it must have been sort of challenging for you to think about what is content in a certain way as you got into this book. How would you define it succinctly, if you can?
You can, because the whole question was, what
I
is
mean, ads are
content? Like,
content,
everything's content, isn't it?
right?
Like
Everything is content, swallows
everything is
everything.
content. Like every kind of marketing, since even research has shown, or while I was looking, I found that the first advertisement known to humankind was a cave person had done it in the cave, like advertising something. We're like, wow. So since that time, that's still content. It's a drawing, certainly, but it's still content. So in that sense, it really was where I didn't try to keep a tight definition in there. Because yes, certainly you can apply this to ebooks or video content or blogs or a website or even an ad or a social media post. Anything is content and anything can shape the perception of your brand. And plus, delivery, the mediums change, right? The message is what people need to pay attention to, because the mediums change so often. It used to be radio, then we have podcasts, and now maybe radio is cool again. Or we used to get direct mail, and then we think
Well,
email
direct
was a
mail is cool
novelty.
again. Direct
And
mail is
direct
cool
mail's cool
again.
again. Everything is always, one of my friends, Jeff Cologne, who's the VP of marketing at Dell, and he always says that he's like, Purna, everything is a remix. And he's so right. And we used to spend time, or maybe now if we want to, I guess, kill time, or we've got some half an hour or something, we'll choose a social media site to go and do that. And before then, we would wake up Saturday morning and want to watch cartoons. And before that, TV, it was let's turn on the radio. What people always want to be educated, entertained, empowered, just feel this connection with other humans too. And content is what helps that happen in whatever format. So I deliberately didn't be like, now to write a blog post, do this. It's how do you conceptualize the right message at the right time and the right format and deliver it most effectively to your audience?
That's the challenge. So before we get into some of that specific information about the how-to, one of the things that was striking to me is that you say traditional media, traditional advertising and marketing holds lessons for digital marketers. Digital marketers often feel, I think, that they represent the vanguard and the traditional media are kind of yesterday's news, so to speak, and there's nothing to be learned from traditional media. What would you say are the top lessons that marketers need to understand that traditional media has taught in the past?
I know I wrote this in the book where it's like every generation thinks it invented sex, right? We know that. And every generation of marketers, like,
Yes, I found that a very amusing analogy.
so like every generation of marketers were like, this is it. We've invented it. And I was like, so ignorance isn't bliss. Like ignorance is a catastrophe. Like people can say that, oh, everything we do now, like of course, in this age of AI and technology, like what the heck do we even learn about newspaper advertising? It's like, well, we've always had to connect with people. Sometimes it was harder before. Everyone's in a tizzy about cookies going away and how will we measure impact and what will we do? What do you think they did before we had the internet? Do you think no one did tests? Did no one do any kind of advertising? You know, times change, mediums change, but human nature just doesn't. And so if we can look at what has consistently, like time and time again, resonated with people, caused them to take action, caused them to want to engage with content, we can learn so much from it and we'll set ourselves up for better success. Because if you only know, and I also found this very interesting. So as part of the research for the book, I interviewed a bunch of people from like different specialty areas. And each person from each area was like, nope, my area is the tool. Like this is the right way. Everyone else is doing it wrong, and because they're not doing this. And it was so funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, we all fall into that trap, right? If I'm looking at content marketing, I'm all like, well, what the heck are you doing? Like, come do content marketing is the best. And I didn't want that to be there in the book. I wanted to give people a very holistic, well-rounded perspective. So anyway,
Well,
I
yeah.
was
So
shocked.
no. So an illustration of that, I'll just make an editorial comment. An illustration of what you can take away from traditional media and advertising and marketing is the importance of the ad creative, the importance of the creative, not just ad creative. This is something that's been shown again and again and again to be the most influential element of a promotion of a marketing campaign is the creative, and that often gets buried under the targeting and the metrics and the optimization and all of that stuff. And so this is one of, I think, the key lessons. But the people that you're trying to communicate with is another one that's very important.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.